Well, dear friends, join me in welcoming very warmly Martin Schulz at this year's Europe Day here to our seminar in Verdun. Martin, the last 2 days, this group of young professionals and postgraduates has discussed on the role of the European Union as a European peace project. And we have chosen this site, the city of Verdun, as a place for our conference deliberately, due to the special, unique spirit which is linked with this city as a town of reconciliation and the European peace project. I think that we can hardly find a more apt or more credible personality to talk with us about these issues. So benefit from this opportunity. Alex Taylor is moderating our discussion. Make the best out of it and just let's get started.
Thank you very much indeed. Welcome. Perhaps a big round of applause for Martin Schulz for coming here today. Thank you very much. Mr. Schulz, I'm a European journalist. I've interviewed you several times, and I have learnt a lot here over the last day and a half. We've been having discussions about the role of the EU in terms of keeping stability and peace in Europe. It's been very interesting to have young people's points of view from all around Europe. We also had discussions about the forces which work against the European Union, obviously interesting in the context of what happened on Sunday. We had a very interesting discussion where I learned a lot yesterday about populism. So we're delighted to have you here today, and I'm sure that on the basis of what's happened over the last 2 days, there are many questions that they have for you. So each time, if you could just, I know a lot of you know Mr. Schulz already, but if you could just remind us where you come from and who you are before you ask a question. So who would like to be the first person to ask a question? It's always very difficult to be the first person, but I'm sure that somebody would like to, or else I'm going to come and give you a microphone. Yes, here we are.
My question is the following, and it comes out of the discussions we've had over the last few days. We spoke about the conditions under which interdependence is a force for stability yesterday. And we kind of came to the conclusion that interdependence is a force for stability when it's a mutual benefit for everyone. And I think the language of mutual benefit immediately pushes us towards economics, so everyone has to gain from kind of economic integration. And I was wondering, what's your take on whether this kind of mutual benefit is still the case within the Eurozone, within the European Union? And with regard to Sunday, the election, reading the newspapers, the German newspapers this morning, I saw that there's a kind of immediate wave of criticism of Macron's European economic program, kind of a strong wave that immediately washes over him from certain corners of the political spectrum. So if you could comment on that and whether that's productive for having mutually beneficial economic integration.
I think the European Union is both in a certain way a peace project and an economic project. The question is economic justice, the fair distribution of wealth within the Eurozone and the European Union as a whole, a safeguard for our peace project, or is the opposite, the unfair distribution of wealth, a risk for our peace project? And what we are seeing is that economic depression in some of the regions of the member states of the European Union, and I think especially of the Eurozone, is leading to a kind of mistrust, not only to institutions nationally, also to the European project as a whole. And this is exploited by a lot of people, this cynical people who know very well that it is quite easy to have for every problem a scapegoat, and the best scapegoat is Europe. And to explain that whatever is in our globalized time difficult, becoming more difficult, more interdependent, and therefore less predictable. This is one of the problems of politicians today, that the unpredictable developments, what is called, for example, in the digital development, the disruptive development of economy, which is leading to less predictable strategies, to less strategic planning, is linked to, in one part, and from the left side often coming anti-globalization movement, and from the right wing, but in an increasing number also of left-wingers, as we saw during the election campaign here in France or in the United Kingdom, linked to the European Union. Therefore, I think it is interconnected. Your question is touching on both, on the benefit, which is still possible in a way of more justice and fair distribution of wealth. And on the other side, this is the precondition for safeguarding the internal stability in the society. Peaceful, stable societies are able to organize and to contribute to a sustainable peace project. Unstable or destabilized, internally destabilized societies are putting in doubt democracy. And the European project is, in a nutshell, starting from an economic point of view, from the community of coal and steel, which was, by the way, not to underestimate, also an energy project, became during the development a political project based on cooperation of value-based democracies. But if the values are put in doubt, that democracies can't cooperate across borders. And this is, at the end, linked to each other, benefits and political stability.
Our seminar was basically also about stability and peace, and the European Union is also known for its soft power. So I would have a question, especially to our relation to the Western Balkan region, where we do have the instrument of conditionality. So what's your take on a credible perspective for the countries of the Western Balkans to join the European Union? Because we have like negotiations ongoing for like over the last decade or even more years. So that the instrument of conditionality works. Therefore, we need credibility in our conditions, but also in our rewards, like carrots and sticks. So what's your take on the credible perspectives for the countries of the Western Balkans to join the European Union? Or do we want to further enlarge at the moment?
This is an extremely difficult question. I try to be as open as possible and as blunt as necessary. Credibility depends from sticking to your own criteria and to your own values. If we put in doubt our own values, if we, in applying our own rules, are not as consequent as it is necessary internally within the European Union, how to justify the conditionality. This is not only related to the Western Balkans, it is from a principal point of view a problem of the European Union, as we see in our relation with Turkey. The second point is the capacity to enlarge the European Union depends not only from the applicant countries, it is also the question, are the member states of the European Union prepared to enlarge? This is an unclarified question, because for enlargement you need at the end a unanimous vote in some of the member states' referendums. And what I was criticizing to the European Council when I was the President of the European Parliament is this incoherent debate. On one hand, you open negotiations, access negotiation, or you are granting the status of an applicant country. And on the other hand, on a party congress or in a fringe meeting of an international summit or whatever, the same people say, yeah, but we can't enlarge for the time being, and I have a referendum and I cannot, and in my country, and you know the people are not ready to enlarge. So we must clarify, are we ready to enlarge? Then we should promise and go ahead. Are we not ready to enlarge? We should not promise. This is another element of credibility, or of a lack of credibility, which is in my eyes a risk. Now concretely, and that's my last point, to the Western Balkan states. Normally, the Western Balkan countries need that perspective sooner or later, earlier or later, to join the European Union. They need it. But then the question to them is, you must decide as well. Macedonia, for the time being, looking to the domestic development, is for sure not able to join the European Union. Serbia must decide at the end. President Vučić must decide in which direction he wants to go. They are wavering from time to time. Once they tell, and that they are declaring clearly, and in my meetings with him, he was quite clear in favor of the European Union. But if he has the backing, a sufficient backing in his own party, in his own country, it's always a difficult question. And on which is concerning Bosnia-Herzegovina, let's be honest, the country needs an internal and an outside contribution to be stabilized. First of all, internally, the ethnic and regional tensions are until today enormous. And therefore, perhaps for Bosnia-Herzegovina, the European perspective is the most important one in the whole region. It is diplomatically and politically one of the most difficult questions. I know that my answer is not entirely concrete, but I must admit nobody, neither me nor anybody else, could be concrete of it, because there is a lot of question and, let's be honest, not sufficiently answers.